Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. We are live. You are live with Mary Grace, and this is Real Talk with Mary Grace. It is Thursday, the 3rd of December, 2020, and we are live. We're live on Periscope, Twitter, CloutHub, Facebook, and YouTube. Please make sure you're following. Please make sure you share this. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here. Good to see everybody. I think I'm on a little bit of a delay here on Periscope. Okay, drop a comment, say hello, invite followers. Good to see you. Good to see you back today. Please invite followers. There you go. Okay, if you are on Facebook, I would appreciate it if you would take this link and put it into any groups that you belong to. If you're on YouTube, copy the link and send it to your friends in an email or a text message. Please make sure that you're following and liking on YouTube, also on Facebook and Twitter and Periscope. Glad everybody's here. Thank you for sharing it to other platforms. Thank you for sharing to Parler and CloutHub and all of the other social media world. Okay. Hello. So I don't know about you, but I don't know that the world is ever going to go back to what we thought of as normal when it comes to politics and just sort of going about your everyday life and or watching hearings and reading legal briefs and reading legal opinions and filings and things like that. I didn't know when I first started being interested in the election back in 2015 when Donald Trump came down the escalator that I would be so entrenched in the world of politics. I love it. It's great. I love broadcasting. I love talking to you about what it is that I see and understand, and I love interacting with people in this political realm and in the political spectrum. It's just very interesting. So raise your hand if you have lost a lot of sleep in the last few weeks, staying up, listening to hearings and reading legal filings and opinions. That's me. Yeah. And it seems like everything gets going late at night. So Lynn Wood will get fired up on Twitter starting at about 11 o'clock Eastern. He starts going all savage on the criminals in the Republican Party and and everybody else. The president does his late night tweets. And, Sidney Powell drops lawsuits at 11 midnight, something like that. Yeah, so that's me. It happened last night, breaking, lawsuit filed, and I've lost track of where they are, but it's just amazing. It's amazing. And so, yeah, so here we are. I mentioned the other day that I might be taking more naps. I did take a nap today. I got up early to go do some errands, took my dad out, and then came home and took a nap. And so I have to be up. I have to be on a plane tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. to go away for the weekend. So there's that. I better get some sleep tonight. Yeah, so there's just so much going on. I wanted to talk a little bit today about the patterns that I see emerging. And there's something interesting that I've been noticing. And I think that it's as we listen to these hearings and as we hear testimony after testimony from people who were working the polls, there's a trend that I see emerging, and it's disturbing but not surprising, because when you think about who's behind all of the criminality and the theft, stealing the votes, it makes a lot of sense. So what I think is happening is what I see happening is chaos. That's what I see. I see a lot of chaos. And it is interesting because we've heard so far from Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Georgia. What did I miss? What did I miss? Did I miss a state? We know that there's a lot going to be happening in Nevada, Wisconsin. We've seen some things coming out of Wisconsin. So there's, yeah. So those are the main ones. So what I'm noticing is that in every scenario that's described, there is just an incredible degree of chaos, and it is it's in the situation that I'm describing. Chaos is not a good thing. It's intentional. It's intentional. And what do I mean by this? So, God is not a God of confusion, right? He's not given you a spirit of fear. He's given you a spirit of love, power, and love, and a sound mind. And when I hear people describing what's going on in these elections, I see and hear the opposite of that. I hear just unbelievable, unbelievable amounts of chaos. Somebody just gave me a heads up about my banner. No, it's not supposed to say that. Let me fix that. Thank you. Thank you. We'll fix that. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so thank you. Okay, here we go. Now, when I see these people describing it, there's so much chaos. And what we're starting to see is this. We're starting to see that it's very clear that there was a coordinated effort across multiple states. There was a coordinated effort across multiple states to steal this election. And I was listening to John Frederick's radio, and he had General McInerney on there, and he was saying this is a national security risk. That there's a big problem here. And I've been talking about RICO, for example. I've been talking about the fact that this is coordinated. It's coordinated across state lines. And if this didn't have to do more broadly with our national security, I would stick to calling it RICO. But it's way beyond that now. It's just outright treason. It's a coup, and I've said that before. And so as we see and understand what's happening, it's just so obvious. And I want to talk about this from a practical standpoint. But hold on a second. Because this is what people need to understand. Just writing myself a note. Okay, so this is what people need to understand, is that if for example, okay, I was a teacher. I taught for 12 years. I have a master's in education. And I've been in different school systems, and I've worked under different administrations and management and things like that. Well, one of the things that I learned right from the start as a kindergarten teacher is that you have to be organized. That if you get to your classroom and you don't have your ducks in a row for that day, and you're surrounded by a bunch of 5-year-olds, that's pretty much suicide, right? You have to be organized. You have to have a plan. You have to have all your stuff cut out. You have to have everything ready, everything prepared, okay? And that's just one classroom teaching kindergarten. And if you don't have that, what happens is that everything dissolves into chaos, and it doesn't take long. And if you have a school system, for example, that doesn't have organization, if you have a department that doesn't have organization, it shows it shows very quickly. And you can chalk some of that up to just lack of organization. But everybody can have a bad day. Everybody can have a day where you overslept. As a teacher, anybody who's a teacher knows this. You overslept, you got there late, the kids were there before you, or you had car trouble, the kids are there before you, and you're playing catch up the whole day, and it feels like 5 days by the time you get off and the kids go home. And so that's just an anomaly. You don't want that to be your everyday norm. Well, what I'm seeing and hearing from the way that these elections were run in these strategic cities and counting centers around the country is that that was the norm, that there was a degree of chaos that is entirely inexcusable, and there's no way that anybody can tell me that this wasn't planned. You can't have the number of coincidences that we've seen and that have been testified to over multiple states and multiple cities around the same issues. It's too much, and so it just, do you see what I'm saying? The pattern that we're seeing is just absolutely beyond. Hey, I see a new person on Facebook, Jennifer Matthews. Hello. So do you see what I'm saying? It's so far beyond randomness now. It's gone beyond random. And I'm just saying this as a fairly organized person. Like I said, it was do or die with kindergarten. You have to be organized. And so we're looking at something, and here's how I know that it was planned. I'm going to tell you what my spidey senses are telling me that indicate that it was planned. So we've seen information, we've seen testimony from data people, and we've been looking at the data, and we've been seeing that there are statistical anomalies. So that alone should indicate to you that there's some major, major, major problems. But the other thing that we're seeing now is this. We're seeing that the people who are experienced poll workers, the people who are experienced poll workers were actually, in many cases, kept out of the roles that they did the best. And this is something that started to strike me today and yesterday when I was listening to the hearings in Michigan and in Georgia. And so, for example, there was one lady in Georgia who described having over 20, close to 30 years of experience in the election board. And so she knew exactly what to do. Okay. And when it came time to do the critical roles that would keep the election process running smoothly like a well-oiled machine, she was actually kept out of certain roles. And I'll give you a specific example. So she was brought in to do the recount. And she was brought in to do the recount, and she was one of a number of people who were brought in. And she was told when they put out the call for recount workers, she was told that the only way you could work this job is if you could commit to all 5 days, all of the hours, the whole time. And so she committed, and there were other workers brought in who weren't as experienced because her more experienced coworkers couldn't come. And so she was there, she was working, and she got through one day of work. And then the second day, she got dismissed at 10 a.m. in spite of the fact that there were thousands of ballots remaining to be counted. And this is in the recount. And she was offering to help, because she had committed for those 5 days. So this is day 2, 10 a.m. She has nothing to do, no work to do. And was that Miss Susie? That was her. And so, yeah, she had all of this experience, and she was offering to help, and then she was dismissed. And so that was one instance. Okay. And then after her, another lady came, and she said something similar, which was that, she actually was trying to get in a position of authority because, she knows a lot, and she was offering to help in areas where her expertise would be best put to use. And then she was told, no thanks, thanks, but no thanks. Sorry, I didn't write down their names. I was multitasking. But do you see the point? And so I started to realize this, that, and then I was listening to the testimony from Michigan last night. I was listening to the tech woman with the blonde hair. I'm going to talk about her in a minute, but she was talking about how nobody knew what to do, that these people weren't trained, that it was complete chaos, that they didn't know how to work the machines, they didn't know how to tabulate, that they were trained on tabulating, and then they were put on adjudication. So there's just, it's like, again, if you've ever worked in an organization where you have poor management, those types of things happen. But when they do happen, generally what transpires is that somebody who knows what's going on steps up and sort of takes charge and says, hey, I'm trained on adjudication, and it looks like these people aren't. So could you move me over to this space? I'm more than willing to change assignments and to help the people who are doing this. Okay. That's normally the way things work. Okay. And so the interesting thing here, though, is that wouldn't happen. The people who had the most experience and were willing and able to come in and right the ship, as it were told, thanks, but no thanks. You can leave now. And so, yeah. And not only that, in many cases, they're abused. I mean, I got to say, Michigan, y'all have some of the meanest people I've ever seen. There's a real problem in Michigan. We need to pray over that state, because there's a stronghold of evil over Michigan that is unlike anything I've seen in a long time. There's some real hate going on there. It's awful. Okay, so let me get back on track. So going back to the chaos. So the whole point, as I'm thinking through this, and I'm thinking, this was the point, because it's along the same lines of the fact that Joe Biden didn't campaign. Why campaign if you already have the election rigged, if it's going to be stolen for you, if it's all rigged in your favor? Why campaign? So let's take that principle over to the election process itself. Why train workers? Why organize the workers? Why put people in their lane if you were planning to steal it anyway? And take it a step further and get rid of the people who know what's going on. Keep those people out. That is why Miss Susie was sent home on day 2, because they realized that she knew what was going on and that she had the goods on those people and that she was paying attention. Because think about this. Now, let's go back to the blonde girl in Michigan. She is basically the Marissa Tomei of the Michigan election process. If you ever watched My Cousin Vinny and you remember that character, the blonde lady that testified in Michigan, that's exactly who we were seeing last night. Okay. She was amazing. She was so good. What was her name? The blonde one with the hair. I'm pretty jealous of her hair. The one that was like, well, I took an oath. Did you? Do you remember that one? She was so good, and she was fearless. This one. I mean, it was kind of funny because look at her. Yeah. So she's an IT girl with 2 degrees, and she just let him have it, right? But it was pretty funny when she was firing back at that Johnson character, right? Melissa Cardone, she was hilarious. She was like, yeah, she went right back at that Johnson character and Marissa Carone, right? And she was leaning forward. She goes, because they were trying to call her a liar. And she goes, nobody would do this. Nobody would volunteer for this. I would be put in, like, I could be put in prison. I signed a thing that said I could be put in prison. And then she looks at that lady and she goes, I took an oath. I signed an oath. I signed an affidavit. Did you? It was really funny. And so, but it really did. It reminded me of that Marissa Tomei character in My Cousin Vinny, when he was telling her that she when she was wearing her getup, right? I mean, she was in this southern town and she stood out like a sore thumb, and he was trying to tell her she should change into something a little more demure, right? And she looks at him and he's got on like that crazy cowboy outfit, and she looks at him and she goes, sure, and you blend. Do you remember that line? This is what she reminded me of. And then Rudy's sitting there and he's trying to keep her in hand, you know? It was pretty funny. And so I just thought it was very fitting that Rudy Giuliani had his own My Cousin Vinny character sitting right next to him in this hearing in Michigan. It was so good. And somebody just said the media is now destroying her character. Yeah, because that's what they do. And this is what they do. It's just pure evil. And so going back to what I was saying about, we just had to have some comic relief there. Sure, and you blend. Do you remember that? Okay, so so going back to what I was saying about the chaos. The chaos is intentional. They purposely created a system of chaos where it would set up the system to where they could feed in these ballots and manipulate the numbers. Because remember, they had it all set up to where they could just manipulate the ballot, the counts in the machine. They had fractional voting, all that stuff. Okay. And so that is what they were doing. And in order to pull off a heist like that, you have to break down the system. And so when I was talking to the guy from Pennsylvania the other day when I interviewed him, he was describing what looked like kabuki theater, where they had it looked like they were being transparent and it looked like they were following the rules. And they were, like they would have one batch of ballots going in one elevator and another batch coming out another elevator. And it looked like they were the same, but they did the bait and switch and things like that. And so it was very intentional. And another thing that they did, for example, is that they flooded the zone with absentee ballots. They sent out in March in Georgia over 1 million absentee ballots unsolicited. And so if you've noticed throughout all of this, there is an overriding theme of cheating and winning by any means necessary. I mean, I was joking about it the other day because every time you turn around, they figured out another way to cheat. And I was saying, it's like the 12 days of Christmas, only with election fraud. They're coming up with new ways that you would never think of. And so, it's amazing. It's astonishing, the things that they could do. And so going back to the election itself, though, one of the things that I was thinking about too, this is another way that they managed to cheat the way that they did. I'm noticing a very, very stark contrast between the people who are testifying and the people who are attacking them, basically the leftists, the radical left. And that is this. One of the overriding characteristics that I see in the people who are testifying is that they have really strong integrity, whether they're Democrat or Republican or nonpartisan. They have a deep sense of right and wrong. And they also, in many cases, present as Christians. They have that affect. And the one Indian woman who talked last night, I think her name was Hema, she even referenced her church. And so it was very interesting because we see that over and over. We hear people praying, we hear them referencing God, we hear them referencing their faith, and so we see that happening, and it's it's not uncommon, right? And one of the things that I've noticed, and I've seen this before when I've been traveling overseas, is that there is a there's something that the radical left does, and it is this: they take advantage of the kindness of Christians. They take advantage of the kindness of people who have integrity and who are steeped in Judeo-Christian morals. I've noticed a lot when I've traveled, and it's in some ways, for example, Americans are considered kind of naive when they travel because they get sucked into crazy things in foreign countries because the people who are running scams know that Westerners, particularly Americans, are really trusting and kind. And that's how we get suckered into bringing, to allowing thousands of, refugees in our country and things like that, and being the piggy bank for the whole world. Okay. And so what I've seen in this particular case, the as I've listened to the testimonies, is that these are just good God-fearing people who are coming forward because their conscience dictates it. And the reason that they care so much about their job in many cases is because they're Christians. And and so it makes even more sense now when you think about how committed the left is to removing Christianity, to removing God from everything. It's no mistake that these governors have cut the have prevented people from going to church, right? Um, because they know that when people come together, when Christians come together, they encourage each other, they talk to each other, they pray, they invoke the name of Jesus, they bring God's name and the power of God into play. And so, there's a huge element of that we're seeing, and it really illustrates to me the intensity of the battle that we're in, because this is a huge battle. It's a huge spiritual battle, and that's something that we've seen over and over, that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. And so when you look at the communist agenda, it's very much based on statism. It's in many ways it's a theocracy, and so where the state becomes God, and that is what is being pushed here. That is why you have people submitting and coalescing with the acquiescing, sorry, with the agenda that's being thrust on them, because they don't have a moral compass. And it's, we're definitely in a time now where we're seeing the division between the people who do have that and the people who don't. And so those are some things that have stood out to me as I watch these hearings, that it's very intentional, that a lot of the behaviors that we're seeing that come across as chaos are really intentional. And so I don't know what you think about that. I don't know if that resonates with you, but that's what I'm seeing. And it is, yeah, it's just, when you have governments not only telling people now that they can't go to work, but commandeering and confiscating their businesses, then we're at a whole different level of tyranny. And that's what's happening. And they're doing it all under the guise of public safety. And so people are starting to rise up. People are starting to wake up. But going back to the voting thing, let me just look at my notes, because there were a couple of issues. That's interesting, Millie. Millie can't see any of the comments. Very interesting. Okay, I want to talk about some of the issues that I've seen with these testimonies too, because I was talking to a friend who's an experienced poll worker in Georgia, and she was giving me some details based on what we were seeing from the testimony today. And there were a couple things that stood out to me, and I just thought it was very interesting. So one of the things that stood out when we were listening to Miss Susie is where she started talking about how her poll pad wasn't working because she it was set up for the wrong precinct. And then she said that they called Dominion, and that they called Dominion, and he reset it remotely. Did you catch that? And I don't even think she understood the extent, the bombshell that she dropped there. That it was like, wait, what? I mean, I rewound it. I listened to it 3 times because she that was insane. And then she said, you can read the manual, you can read the Dominion manual, how to go online and things like that. So she understood, the concept that you're not supposed to have your own personal device, that you're not supposed to have a laptop or anything like that. And literally, all she had to do was call Dominion, and they could dial in remotely to her device and reset it. So think about that. And that device holds the entire database for that precinct. And so then I was asking my friend about this, and she said, yeah, she said that she was in training in March for the primary. This is just before the pandemic took over, that they had just gotten this equipment. And this is a little bit of the background of Georgia. So hopefully you'll stick with me on this, because I think it's very interesting. So Georgia put in the order for these machines in March of 2019. And my friend has a good background in tech. And so she said, this is insane that they did this with only a year before a major primary and an election, because the machines had to be built, assembled, shipped, set up, beta tested, and then people had to be trained. And so if you think about that, many of the machines weren't even there when the pandemic hit and when they shut down the everything. They were supposed to have a primary in March. But when my friend went to the training, she said in March, it was really chaotic because they didn't have everything they needed. And she said one of the first questions people raised was, how is it possible that people can't hack into these devices? And in her polling place, a lot of the poll workers were Democrats, and so she said that it wasn't a partisan thing, and so people were asking, like, these are iPads, and so how is it possible that this can't be hacked? Like, why are we using iPads? They're wireless. And they were told by the trainers, oh no, there's no way that could happen. It was as though, how it was kind of like, wait, how could you even ask that question? That's not going to happen. And so of course it could happen, right? And we have proof of that now, because Miss Susie said that the Dominion worker just remotely changed her device from Michigan or wherever he was. And so I thought that was very interesting. And then the other thing she told me and if you go back to a comment that was made during the election, or during the testimony today in Georgia, one of the things that stood out was that I think it was the lady who came after Miss Susie. She was talking about the paper ballots themselves. And so what happens in these machines is that you come in Georgia, you show your ID or not, depending on where you are, and they give you a little card and you stick it into the voting booth, and there's a touch screen. And you vote with the touch screen, and then it spits out your paper ballot. Okay? That's like the second step. The paper ballot comes out, and then you walk over to the scanner. So you haven't actually voted when you get the paper ballot. It's just a piece of paper. Well, then you walk over to the scanner and you put it in the scanner, and nobody's supposed to look at it or have access to it. And then you cast your vote in the scanner. So the scanner is the part of the process that casts your vote. And so then she said the votes go into the scanner, and at that point it's like a hopper, and they just literally fall into the box in the bottom of the scanner, and they're just in that. It's like, it looks like a printer, and they just randomly fall down in. So I imagine it to be like a big square trash can. So they don't go into a tray where they're neatly stacked. They just shoot out into the bin in the bottom of the scanner. Okay. And so that's what happens. Okay. So those paper ballots, that's the equivalent of your ballot that you would have written into. Okay. And so those are supposed to be saved. But here's the thing. The lady who was testifying in Georgia today said that she was told by one of the Dominion workers, because she I think she was asking about the ballots, like about securing the ballots that had already been cast. So that's those ballots that fall down into the machine, which is supposed to be double locked. Those are like, that's the paper trail of the actual votes that were cast. Okay. And so she was trying to make sure that the chain of custody on those was secure. And she was told by the Dominion guy that that the only thing that really mattered was the memory card that had the data from those votes in stored on it. Isn't that interesting? But the whole reason that they pushed to get these specific machines in, and this was all pushed by Stacey Abrams. My friend told me that the reason they had this system where you did the touchscreen and got a piece of paper and then put the paper in the scanner was that it was in okay, so she said there's a special bag they go into with a lock and a chain of custody code at the end of the night. Okay, so I'm getting to that. But the whole reason that they came up with this system where it spits out a paper ballot that you then feed into the scanner is that they were worried that there was no record of your vote. They didn't want it to go just on the computer. Isn't that weird? And so I think I understand now why they did it, especially why Stacey Abrams was the one to push it. It's all coming together. I'm having an aha moment. Okay, so Stacey Abrams was behind the push to get this new system in Georgia. I think a lot of people know that. And so at the end of the night, those ballots are supposed to go out. They're supposed to be taken out of the box, and then they're put in a canvas bag that has a locking system on it. And every time something gets done like that, there's a chain of custody and people have to sign off on it. And so when you hear the testimony of Ms. Susie, for example, and she tells you that they brought in boxes that were just taped up, what she was saying is that she was surprised that these ballots were brought in these batches, because they should have been brought in those bags, because there was no way of knowing that they weren't tampered with. That's my understanding of what went wrong. All right. So this is interesting. So now I think I understand why Stacey Abrams was pushing for those paper ballots, because go back to the old system, and Donna, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The old system, you would go in and cast your vote and push the button and leave, and there was no piece of paper, right? I think that the reason that Stacey Abrams was pushing for a paper trail is because it gave her the excuse she needed to push millions of paper ballots into the system through mail-in voting. I think because remember back in March, they started pushing universal mail-in voting. Well, you can't do universal mail-in voting without a piece of paper, right? And so I think that I think this is why she did it now, because one of the parts of the testimony was that they had, quote, mail-in ballots that had come in that were very unusual because they had no folds and the paper felt different. And so that was another part of the plan to sow and foment chaos. That's what I think happened here. I think that's what happened. I think that's why she did it. This is all occurring to me as I'm talking to you, but it makes sense now, doesn't it? That if Georgia had a system of just touchscreen voting with no paper, if you wanted to flood the zone with ballots, if you wanted to manufacture votes, wouldn't it make sense to adopt a system that printed and created paper ballots, right? Because you couldn't, because one of the things that has been confusing here is that the mail-in ballots have gotten mixed in with the day of paper ballots. Well, prior to this election, that couldn't have happened because the voting centers had no paper ballots. Are you with me? That's what they were doing. That's why they did it. That's why they adopted this system. Somebody call Rudy. I figured it out. Yeah. Okay. Totally makes sense now. Totally makes sense. Yeah. Because there would be no way to say we got all of these ballots in, we have all these mail-in ballots that need to be counted. There'd be no way, because if the new system had the ability to print ballots, that was the other thing. They could print test ballots. They wouldn't do that before because it was an all electronic system. Yeah. I feel like Sherlock Holmes. I think we just cracked the case. That's what they're doing in Georgia. That's why they did it. Yeah, they're all about chaos. Yeah, my brain hurts a little bit too, Lisa. But that's what they did. So you understand? It's all about chaos. And so the question is, what's next? That's a good question. I know. I want to tell you something, and I want you to understand this. There is 0% chance that Joe Biden gets in office. Is it going to be ugly? Yeah, it's not pretty right now. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of courtroom drama. There's a lot of just craziness happening. Some of it is for show. Some of it is just pure evil. But I know that the president has this. And here's something that came out during the testimony too, and that is that the machines, that the votes can be uploaded in real time, and the fact that the Dominion technician could have remote access to the machine proves right there that they were able to manipulate the vote in real time. However, and this is something that I want everybody to understand, I talked about this yesterday about the FISA warrants. That is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. I think that's what it's called. And that is basically that we can legally spy on American citizens using the FISA warrant by making a petition to the FISA court when we believe that they are involved in potential crimes with foreign entities. And so if you think about what we're hearing now, if you think about what we're hearing now with all of these governors and secretaries of state and lieutenant governors and the involvement with other countries, one of the things that we know is that the president and his team were aware of this way back, even I think before 2016. But it's there's we know that we've had FISA warrants out on these people. And so we've been told we have everything, we have it all. And that's important to understand because we can listen to them, we can track their emails, we can track their text messages. We pretty much know, what they had for dinner every night. And the other thing that people are missing in this, and I've talked about it before, is that the military is involved. There's no way that they're not involved. And I'll tell you how I know. Because these people that are testifying, many of them are military intelligence, former military intelligence, right? These are military analysts, data analysts. And so I want to encourage you, because again, if you're looking for the FBI to be the only source of investigation here, you're going to be really disappointed. But if you understand that there are different branches who can be investigating, then you're going to feel better. Because one of the things that is important to know and to remember is that the president has put trillions of dollars into building up our military. He also set up the Space Force. And the thing that is kind of funny about the Space Force is that the left made fun of the Space Force because they said that, what do we need, like flying saucers to fly around? And, they made it sound like it was a joke. But the thing about the Space Force is it's actually really critical because it protects our communications and it makes us dominant in space, which is where our satellites are. And so you think about a couple of things that happen up in space. There's a lot of surveillance that happens from space. There are drones, there are satellites. They have the capability of listening to people. And so that's something I want you to remember, because it means that we actually have more than you know, that our military gives us literal insight into what people are doing. We're the strongest military in the world. So just remember that, our ability to spy on people is unsurpassed. And so think about that, and then think about the fact that we have like Patrick Byrne, civilians who are data analysts and experts who have been analyzing and looking into this for a number of years now. And so there's so many avenues of knowledge and understanding and intelligence that most people just aren't thinking about. Okay. And so I just want you to keep that in mind, because again, the FBI is a problem, but that doesn't mean that nothing is being done. And it doesn't mean that we don't see what's happening. I just want you to understand that. And so, one of the things that came out last night in the Michigan hearing, and this is along those same lines, this was important. There was a man who was testifying, and he was one of those military guys, and and he said something really interesting. He said that we consider the voting apparatus to be critical national security infrastructure. So let me say that again. We consider the voting apparatus, the elections process in America, to be critical national security infrastructure. Write that down. This is important. Critical national security infrastructure. And then he said, just like our ports, our nuclear capabilities, our waterways, our power grid. So think about that. If it is a critical national security infrastructure issue, who is in charge of guarding that? That's the question. Think about it. Also think about the people. Again, think about the people who are coming forward. Think about their credentials. Think about the people who are involved in this. Think about, every other person that comes forward to testify has some kind of military background. You should find this encouraging. This should be encouraging to you that General Flynn is pardoned, that General Flynn is unleashed, that Tony Shaffer is involved. Right? There are people who are involved with this. There are people who are spearheading the research and the analysis who are national security experts. And so I want you to go back to election night. I want you to go back to the 4th at whatever time the president gave his talk, 2:30 in the morning. And he said, look, I'm here to, it wasn't that night. I think it was a couple days later when he did the talk. I think it was on Saturday. He said, I'm here to preserve the integrity of our elections. That's what he said. And I've talked about this before because it is, that's really what he's doing. And so when he gave his speech last night, anytime he's talked about the election, he's made it very clear that this isn't about him winning. Now, we know he won. We know that he's our president. We know that we want him to be our president for a long time. But this is so much more. And he said this over and over and over and over on the campaign trail. This is not just another 4-year election. And that's what we're looking at right now. That this is for the preservation of our country. This is for the preservation of our way of life, our Constitution, and Western civilization. And so if America falls, everything falls. And the president understands this. The people around him understand this. And so we are in a coup. This is a national security crisis. This is a constitutional crisis. It's an election crisis. It is not, it's gone beyond election fraud. It's gone way beyond that. And I think a lot of people are starting to get that idea. And one of the reasons for the hearings is that it's the information phase. Because again, when you walk around out in public and you talk to a lot of the low information voters, many of whom are highly intelligent and highly educated, they don't know. They don't understand what's going on here. They really just think that it's going to be 4 years of Biden and then someone else will run. And because that's the way it's been for a long time, that you vote, you don't get what you want, and you just go, oh well, gosh, I really liked him. I guess we'll just put up with this guy, because that's what happened for a long time. And so it's just we're in a watershed moment in history, and so some people don't want to know. I don't know how the president is going to pull this off. I don't. But it has to be done. Like, this is not a situation where you just live and let live, where a few people get a slap on the wrist and then they promise not to do it again. If there's one thing we've learned, it's that the corruption that we've seen goes just really far beyond anything you could have imagined. I mean, you look at the Republican Party, you look at the leadership of so-called Republican states, Georgia and Arizona. They're supposed to be bedrock Republican states. And these people are just unbelievably corrupt. You look at what's happening with the leadership of the RNC. You look at like Ronna McDaniel, where is she? How come her state lost? They won in 2016, largely, allegedly because of her. And now her state is turning out to be one of the most corrupt, the nastiest people at the helm. And it's her state. Does that make sense to anybody? How could she get Michigan over the hump in 2016 and lose it by so much in 2020? Like, that's just not logical, okay? And think about that. How come these Democrats are not in Georgia fighting for the president who has endorsed them? Somebody that I know has a theory, and maybe this is it. But maybe the Republicans being quiet is part of the plan to throw off the criminals. That the silence from the GOP is sort of a psyop that's working in the opposite direction to make them put their guard down. I don't know. What do you think about that? Could be. I feel like the president is going to. I feel like things are going to come out in the next couple of weeks in such a way that I don't think we're going to have a runoff. I don't know, though. I don't know. I mean, the president's doing his rally on Saturday in Georgia, so we'll see how that goes. But it could be. Yeah. I don't know that I'm going to be able to broadcast for the next couple of days, and so I'll open it up to questions for just a minute here, and we'll see. I'm prepared to accept any accurate election result. I hope that Joe is as well. I honestly don't think that there's any way at this point to get an accurate result because of the I don't think there's any way to get an accurate result because of what has happened to the ballots. So, for example, Donna was telling me about the whole thing with these bags, where if the seal is broken, that should completely invalidate that whole batch of ballots, and we've seen that happen over and over again. And so there's really hardly any way to do even a recount or a forensic analysis because that batch is corrupted, right? And so I didn't comment on State Farm Arena video yet. Okay. Yeah, I want to make a comment about trolls. So sometimes people ask me why I block certain people when they first come into Periscope. and why I'm so quick to block people. And I just blocked a troll who put in an incredibly nasty comment. And if you're a male broadcaster, it probably never, ever, ever happens to you. But if you're a female broadcaster, there's a reason that we block trolls, and we're very quick to do it. So that's just an FYI. If you're ever tempted to say, "Why do you block people so fast?" Yeah. So another point about that was the equipment came in with no security tags, which is even worse. Yeah. So the lady, yeah. So she was describing how corrupted and compromised the ballots were. I mean, they're just, it's like the thing that I think about this is um, the more you hear and the more you see and the more you understand this, you hear people saying, I know a fake ballot. I know because I've been doing this for so long. And somebody said in the chat that they've worked in casinos and they know counterfeit money when they feel it. And I've been thinking about this because the thing about your vote is that it really is, it's like money, and it's been thrown around. It's like your money is getting thrown around and not respected. It's like they want to turn our entire society into a society of counterfeits. And it makes sense because you have a party that wants to tell you that there's 27 genders, right? And now they're corrupting the voting system so badly that they're corrupting the voting system so badly that your vote means nothing. And they're doing it. It literally is just like, it's like pumping counterfeit money into the system. That's what they're doing with these ballots. So, it's really concerning to me. Now, people are asking, oh, Donna, I think you might have muted somebody who shouldn't be muted. So people are asking about the Insurrection Act. And I don't know. I don't know what the president's going to do. I don't know if he's going to, I don't know if he's going to do that. Let me just check something here. I'm not following that. It was Gizmo's mom, Donna. I don't know if you can unmute. If you got muted by accident, sorry. Hold on a second. I had a question I wanted to look at. Trump video, New York AG. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to that. So I don't know. I can't answer that question. Okay. Any other questions? I blocked that guy, Donna. That was somebody else got muted who shouldn't have. Any other questions until, so Tress777, Bill, hey Bill, I'm not following your whole line of comments here. I'm trying to follow this line of questioning. Yeah, we're not actually out of time. I think it's okay. If you watch my show yesterday, I was reading a thread from Imperator Rex on Quod Verum, Can the entire election be thrown out? I think there's a way to do that. Praying Medic did a broadcast the other night on Tuesday. He was talking about like the different paths to getting the president elected. And remember, he can get elected by Congress. Congress can elect him, and it's only one vote per state. So just keep that in mind. You're welcome, Melissa. Right, let me just look up here. I'm trying to figure out what Bill is talking about. You've been talking. You have a whole thread of questions here. Hold on. Until votes are counted in Congress, it's not final. Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of drama going on, and here's something that keeps coming at me. For some reason, people are obsessed with Gina Haspel, and somebody sent me a story today saying that she was arrested, but then the other day there was a story going around that she was dead. And so if she was arrested, they arrested a corpse, but I don't think she's dead. But I would be very careful about what you're listening to and what websites you're clicking on and how you fall into the trap of chasing gossip. Like, don't major on the minors, okay? Just stay focused on the fact that the president is winning. Okay, Bill says to read the Electoral Count Act of 1887. There's a lot of drama happening right now, and so I'm just going to caution you to be really careful about what you grab onto. I would listen to the president. I would listen to his closest team and advisors. I would listen to Rudy Giuliani. I would listen to Richard Grenell. DNI Radcliffe. You have to go to the source, okay? If you are looking, don't go chasing all of this gossip. It just doesn't do any good. So the president's confidence in Barr. Yeah, people are obsessed with Barr right now because his name has been brought up, and he has been maligned for not doing anything. And the president said, ask me in a few weeks. I think everything's fine with Barr. I think that part of what's going on with Barr is a little bit of a distraction. So, when the president says, let's wait and see, that's what he means, because it usually means that he has something planned. And the president needs you to stay focused. He needs you to stay in prayer. He needs you to be focused on winning and not chasing every rumor that comes down the pike, because he's not distracted. So he's sending you a signal to be focused. X22 has an interesting take on Barr. Okay, X22 report. That's a good broadcast. So, one of the things I want to remind everybody is that the Justice Department is working and doing what they do. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm saying that they're not going to telegraph their moves, just the way the president isn't telegraphing his moves. And Jim is saying it's not Barr's time to come on stage. Exactly. So there are a lot of people being quiet. That doesn't mean they're not doing anything. Because remember, I told you that the people and the organizations and the entities that are accomplishing the most, they're the ones that you're not really hearing about. So, listen for the sound of that one hand clapping, because, that's where the action is. It's not the theater. It's not the political theater that you're seeing play out before you. What's going on with Rudy Giuliani, what's going on with the court cases and all of this is that that's the information. The information is key, because we have to get the information to the masses. And you cannot do that without these hearings. Now, not everybody's watching them, but a lot of people are. A lot of people are tuning in. I like hundreds of thousands, if millions of people. So, people are not watching TV. They're sick of Fox. They're annoyed with Netflix because they're showing kid porn. And, people are turning on Real America's Voice and One America News, and they're watching Real News, and those networks are airing a lot of these hearings. And so this information is coming into people's lives in a way that it never has before. And so people are starting to tell their friends. I mean, I'm getting new people every day on Facebook. I'm getting new people on YouTube, which is important, right? Because the diehard people aren't necessarily on Twitter, on Facebook. Yeah. So Jim is saying it's phase one, educate the public. Yeah, there's a lot of education that has to happen because let's face it, there's an entire population that still believes that, anybody that tests positive for the Rona is has an instant death sentence. They really believe it's a death sentence because they haven't learned about the therapeutics. They don't even know. And so there's just an incredible level of anxiety and fear that people are dealing with right now. And so it's hard for people to think rationally. Yeah, so Medic said we're in the information phase, not the justice phase. So that's a good way to describe it. American Patriot Artist, you're here, you're new. Great, that's awesome. Lynn Wood gave all patriots a homework assignment. Let me see what Jim said. Jim said, a friend of mine said there's so much of this fraud, I can't keep up with it all, which is the result they want. Yeah, it's chaos. Yeah, so you missed the early part of my broadcast, which was that, this is all chaos. It's intended to sow chaos. And the mainstream media, that's a good question about whether the White House can throw out the mainstream media. I have a feeling that that's going to change. I just have a feeling that these networks are going to go down, that they're going to be replaced with people that are doing true journalism. That's just my sense. Okay. So, anyway. Okay. I may or may not be broadcasting through the weekend. I may or may not be going back to DC to do more broadcasting in the coming weeks. So just, keep me in prayer. I am going to be traveling the next couple of days. And so just, hang in there. Just keep ingesting the truth. Make sure that you contact me so that you can get superfoods and CBD oil. I have a coupon for that. I didn't mention it at the beginning of the show. Contact me, info@marygracemedia.com. I use organic green superfoods. It is part of my daily routine. I have meal replacements. It's just one of the best things that I've ever done. It keeps me energized. It is the foundation and the basis of my diet. And so anybody that wants to get that into your body, if you want to get superfoods, you can do that. So info@marygracemedia.com. I'm reading the chat while I'm talking to you. I apologize. But yeah, so the other thing I have is CBD oil. So you can save anywhere from $50 to $100 or more on your first month's order. And if you order the superfoods from me, you can get a whole month's supply and save $100 off of that. So it's a great thing to do going into the holidays. We are going to be having a transformation group that's going to be starting at the end of December so that you can, if you're going to be making New Year's resolutions, you can start with that group right at the end of December and not wait until 2 weeks into January. So message me so that you can get started on that and order your superfoods so that you don't have to wait. It's info@marygracemedia.com. Make sure you do that. Another way to support the show is to go to my website, marygracemedia.com, and click on support. And you can go to the support links there. You can go to my Venmo account, or you can go to Give Butter. Either one works. And so those are ways you can support the show. When you buy superfoods, I do get a commission. So it's great. It works. It's a win-win for everybody because you get healthier, you have great healthy meal options, and you can support the show at the same time. So it's awesome. So thank you for being here. And I will be back for sure on Monday at 5 Eastern. And I will be bringing you more coverage. Make sure you're listening to the hearings. Encourage your friends to encourage your friends to watch the show and to watch all the hearings that are going on. Share this with everybody. Somebody asked about the fake pardon. Yeah, it's just fake news. That's the only answer I can give you about that. There, the mainstream media is expert at coming up with ridiculous headlines that are intended to make the president look bad. It's all a diversion. They know that the election is stolen. And here's one last parting thought. Think about this. We have all of these experts. We have all of these regular, everyday Americans coming forward. We have expert testimony. We have people describing what happened to them during the elections. And, as a teacher, as a former teacher, I took pride in what I did. I take pride in the work that I do now. And imagine if you are running elections in a major urban area and you have hundreds and hundreds of people coming forward and saying that your elections were a train wreck and that it was run badly, for example, in Georgia. If you had any pride whatsoever in your work, wouldn't you counter punch? Wouldn't you come out and bring your own witnesses to counter what is being said? I mean, I would fight back. Think about that. You think about what is happening right now. Like, imagine, Lynn Wood is pushing Brian Kemp to sue him. He wants to be sued by Brian Kemp for defamation so that everything will come out in discovery. But let's go back to just the regular people, like people who are running the boards of elections. I mean, they're being put to shame right now. And so if they have integrity and they care about the process and they want to clear their name, why aren't they bringing hundreds of people to rebut what is being said about their election process? Do you ever ask yourself that? And if anybody tells you that this has been debunked, just say, I don't see that happening. I don't see witnesses coming forward to defend and to describe the opposite of what all of these witnesses are saying. Who has debunked these hundreds of witnesses? Dominion certainly hasn't. Where are the executives of Dominion? If people are being told that Dominion is run and owned by foreign entities and that they have tapped into our election process, then why aren't they defending themselves? Who's out there defending the people who ran this election? They're not defending themselves. Why? I mean, right? If you've done a good job on something, if you think that you did a good job and everybody's out there just slamming you, wouldn't you stand up for yourself? Even at the local level. I mean, you look at what happened in Michigan last night. Those representatives, those state legislators, they weren't defending the process. They were attacking the witnesses. And this is what they do, right? They can't, they have no policy. It's just like when we come at them with policy, they can't rebut. They have no case. That's why. So those are my parting thoughts. Make sure you contact me, info@marygracemedia.com, so that you can get your voucher to get your superfoods. And seriously, order now so that your order will get here and you'll be all ready and prepared to do your superfoods transformation when the new year comes, because I'm going to be taking part in that. We're going to have a group, a support group, so you can do that. So if you've been wanting to lose weight or just get more energy or deal with autoimmune issues or anything like that, joint pain, brain fog, etc., this is the time. info@marygracemedia.com. Okay, so I'll be back on Monday. Thank you for being here. Have a great evening, afternoon, and keep watching the news, the real news.